Hello, all, and welcome to our inaugural episode of BayHawks Live, presented by LECOM. My name is Michael Somrek. I'm the Director of Communications for the team, and I will be your host for the next 30 minutes. The nature of these sessions will be to be as interactive as possible. We encourage those in attendance to submit questions in the Q&A feature, and we'll do our best to filter through all of them and get those questions answered. For today's episode, episode number 1, I am joined by Erie BayHawks team president Matt Bresee and Erie BayHawks head coach Ryan Pannone. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us today, and I am very excited to get this show on the road.
Yeah, thank you very much for setting this up and for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I'll just kick it off real quick. Just first, on behalf of the whole organization, we hope everybody's safe. We certainly miss all of you, given the abrupt end of the season. We want to take this opportunity real quick to just again thank our fans, our season ticket members, our group leaders, corporate partners, all of those that mean so much to us and have for the past 12 years. We miss all of you. Can't wait to be back together again soon. So I can tell you that our staff has continued to work remotely since March 13th. Working closely aligned with the league, with the NBA, with an eye towards next season and the future, and we're certainly optimistic. Like I said, just excited to be back. We hope together in the confines of Erie Insurance Arena. And with that, I also want to take the opportunity to really thank the Pelicans for the past season too. I know we're gonna get to Ryan here quick, but really appreciate what the Pelicans did as our new NBA partner this past season, from the top down, from Mrs. Benson, the owner of the Pelicans, to their front office staff, and to Coach Pannone and their staff. What I can tell you, for those that maybe haven't had an opportunity to interact with them personally, they're high quality people, and we really appreciate the way that they jumped into Erie, Pennsylvania this year, welcomed the relationship and really put a lot of effort behind it. So we are looking forward to season number 2 with the Pelicans. And like I said, hopefully be back together again before too long. So I will throw it back to you, Michael, and ready to get started with Coach Pannone.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt, again for those words. And Ryan, really looking forward to getting this little interactive session going on. I guess we'll just kind of start it off with, year 1, head coach in Erie with the BayHawks. Wasn't your first stint in Erie, though. I know you were an assistant coach in 2014, 2015. So just kind of wanted to get your overall thoughts on the season. What went well, what didn't go well, what you are looking forward to for year 2, and all of that moving forward.
Well, I think laying the foundation as an expansion team, obviously it was the first time from a player standpoint, personnel standpoint, front office, outside of myself and Matt, of everyone working together. That was the first time from players, coaches, staff members. And so I think laying the groundwork for what the future is important. Being able to look back as an expansion team and feel that there's a lot of things that we could improve on and off the floor, which is kind of what your goal is in that year 1. To make things run a little bit smoother. And so I thought that was good. I thought we did some things well. I thought the way that our players, number one, the way that they represented the BayHawks in terms of in the community and their interaction with the fans was really good. I thought we had good character guys, and the way that they embraced the fans after games, I thought was really good and was something that was really important to us, something we spoke a lot about. I thought if you look at the development standpoint, a lot of our players improved from their previous season and in various ways. Obviously, the record wasn't what we wanted or what we hoped for. We would have liked to have won more games, and obviously in the last 10 games we won 4, which is a lot considering we won 13 overall. I think one of the biggest things that we had to overcome was injuries. You know, we had 11 players that missed 72 games due to injury, and I think that's really hard for any team to overcome. And hopefully, you know, we get some of these guys back for next year, and we have some continuity between our players and our staff. I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I didn't realize that it was muted. But as you had mentioned, one thing was, year one, trying to have player development, player progression, but also that injuries kind of form a hindrance to that. For you as a coach, coaching staff from top down, from Mark all the way to TJ, Mary, Perry, all the guys, how does that look in terms of still trying to utilize everything that you have with the players and putting together still a solid game plan for games that had been going on this season?
It's difficult with the injuries, right? Because you can't do as much work before or after practice. You can't practice as long. You can't prepare in the same way when you have multiple guys that have been injured. And, from throughout December, January, we only had maybe 2 or 3 practices with 10 plus players. And so it's unique in terms of your preparation and trying to manage bodies, but also trying to prepare the right way and be professional. And that was a difficult part of the year, something that we had to overcome.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. And another thing you had mentioned too was hoping to get guys back, bring some form of continuity into year two. From what you've seen in year one, what can you kind of take from that and building forward to year two?
Well, I mean, obviously, we're hoping players advance to better situations. The natural portion of the G League is we should have some of the players back, which I think will help advance us in terms of when we get to training camp, whatever that may be, because now we're going to have guys that understand not just the system and not just the style of play, but they'll understand our coaching staff will understand them, and they understand Erie. They have a better feel for what it's like living in Erie, being in Erie, and what the team means to Erie. So I think anytime you can do that right, it's going to make your process much easier and your process much smoother.
Definitely. And actually, this is great. We've had a couple people already log into the Q&A and have some questions for you, Coach. So one question we have is from David Barr. He says, how tough was continuity development this season? As we had already mentioned, with injuries, having multiple different lineups with different guys on the floor at the same time. Tough to have everyone on the same page, I imagine, but that is also one thing that you had mentioned, just trying to get the continuity and try and get guys on the same page. So just, I guess, expanding on that a little bit more.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough for various reasons, especially for the players, because a lot of the players were now playing out of position. And so we had guys that were put in position to do things that they really hadn't done before, which I think was not only in terms of production-wise, it was hard on them, right? Obviously, it led to some of the losing, just the different injuries, but then mentally having to deal with that, being asked to do things that they're not really used to do, that may or may not be their strengths. And that was the hard part. And then having guys try to remember plays and actions from multiple positions, and having players, as we all know, which happens in the G League anyways, but some nights you might have a DNP and the next night you might play 20 minutes. And so trying to keep those guys mentally and physically ready are the challenges of the G League.
That makes perfect sense to me. And actually, we're fielding another question outside of Josh Gray and Zylan, the two-way guys from this past year. Who are you most impressed by down the stretch late in the season in terms of growth, as you had mentioned, seeing guys in their player development from game 1 till game 42 or whatever number it was before the season ended? But I guess in your opinion, who are you most impressed by?
I mean, obviously, I think if you take a look at Vito Brown, who has been mentioned for most improved players in the G League. He's been in the G League for 3 years. He's been cut by one G League team, traded by 2. And for us, he started the season not playing many minutes, coming off the bench to becoming a 6th, 7th man, to becoming a starter, to becoming a go-to player for us, and having a career year in every aspect. So I'd have to say Vito from start to finish. Obviously down the stretch, Jalen Adams was playing at an extremely high level. So was EK was starting to get comfortable, and Tony Carr and Scotty Lindsey, and I thought we were just starting to hit our rhythm of getting guys healthy. Not just getting them healthy, but getting past the minutes restriction. That's what people sometimes don't understand. Not only have guys missed 8, 9, 10, 11 games due to injury, but then when they come back, they're on minutes restriction, they're on practice restriction. So I thought we finally started to see some of those guys gaining confidence and getting comfortable. But Vito Brown, I think his play from last year to this year was amazing.
Yeah, and I from my viewpoint as well, I think Vito developed a lot. Also noticing some 30-point games. I remember him having a clutch 3-pointer against Greensboro late down the stretch in January, and just really had some awesome games to watch. And actually, that leads into a fun little transition. I know you talked about players transitioning, trying to build and progress in their development over the years. I know some guys will go over and play internationally. Obviously, with everything going on with COVID, that's not really in the works. But in terms of guys playing overseas, guys continuing to develop their game, and I know you have an extended experience in terms of international basketball, from stops in, what is it, China to Jerusalem to Slovakia. The first thing is, in terms of international experiences, what were you able to take away from those experiences, and how did they mold you into the coach that you are today?
I'd say first off, they really helped me in terms of appreciation. Going to China and understanding. When I grew up, we didn't travel. We didn't travel as a family. We didn't go on a whole lot of family vacations too far from Florida, and so all I knew was America, to heading to China and seeing a totally different way of life in every aspect. And when I first got there, all I could think about was like, well, why don't they do it this way? This is how we do it in America. Why don't they do this? And what you begin to realize, right, is China is a much older nation than we are. And so I think gaining respect for different cultures, and realizing in all of the places that I've lived, from Germany, China, Israel, South Korea, Slovakia, that each country and culture has something that we can adapt and steal that will make America better. And so I think having a more receptive, open view in terms of understanding culture and understanding where people come from had really helped me as a coach. Communication-wise, when you're dealing with players that don't speak English in different parts of the country, learning how to efficiently and effectively communicate with them, because that applies everywhere, all over the world, right? That's something as coaches we're always trying to do a better job of, is learn how to communicate, and then also understand that a lot of the same problems we have on the coaching side in America, things that we get frustrated with, are the same things that happen all over the world. In every country and every culture, you're trying to figure out how to motivate your players, how to play harder, how to compete more, how to play more unselfish, how to play together. And, so you just realize that it's the same problems everywhere, and different countries and cultures have different ways to try to attack those problems and help you grow as a coach.
That's awesome. That's extremely insightful, and great that you were able to take away something from each stop that you had made along the way to being back in Erie now. And one thing that you had mentioned, taking things away, trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. We have a question in the chat. What did you consider some of the BayHawks' strengths on the court this past season, and also maybe a weakness that you were working to improve on, just noticing as the season progressed?
Weaknesses were definitely turnovers. That was a big weakness for us. And it's something, from more or less start to finish of the season, we led, or we're second or third in the league in turnovers. And, in our 30 losses, our average margin of loss was 12 points a game, and we gave up 27 points a game off turnovers. So obviously, we were middle pack of the league in turnovers. We would have won a lot more games. And I think our turnovers came for a lot of reasons, right? We had some guys that we were playing out of position at times that had to become more primary ball handlers, that they hadn't really been primary ball handlers, decision makers. A lot of the Pelican style of play is extremely fast and trying to play a lot through different guys as decision makers. And so I think that was a big part of it. And then we had a lot of rookies. And I think that's something we struggled with pretty much all year long that I would have liked to have been better. And I think something we struggled with early on and that we improved at was our ball movement and unselfishness and three-point shooting. And I think from start to finish, we really improved in those areas. And if you really look at something we were pretty good at from start to finish, overall defensively in the half court, we were good. If you take away all of our turnovers, we were top 10 defensive team, if you take those away. So those are kind of three areas, I believe.
Gotcha. And one thing that I picked up that you had mentioned, which is a good segue, is trying to take what the Pelican style of offense is and mold it into the offensive style that you're trying to exude in Erie. One question we have in the chat is how much direction do the Pelicans give you, if at all, and especially during this postponement in terms of still trying to work with guys, figuring out if they're staying in shape, if you have kind of a tie with guys, if they're doing any at-home workouts, you're trying to stay in contact with them. How does that all kind of shape out?
Well, from the start of the season, they gave us some direction in terms of what the offensive coordinator and Coach Gentry wanted, Alvin Gentry and Chris Finch, what they wanted offensively, what they wanted us to run, and then defensively, what they wanted us to run. And I was very fortunate that they also gave us some leeway to try some things that I wanted to do. Mostly, we tried to stick to their main offenses and defensive philosophy. That way, as Zylan and Josh went up and down, there wasn't a big disconnect between the two. After the season, it's different, right, between the G League and the NBA, because the NBA is going to resume and the G League is not. And obviously, we've between our staff, our coaching staff, we've checked up on the players. The guys are professionals, so they're working, staying in shape. But the G League season isn't going to restart. So then now it becomes what's next for them, and when is that? Because realistically, the G League is probably going to start later. And then in Europe or international markets, same thing. We're not exactly sure when everything will start. So I think for direction for those players, it's it's a little bit different than what we see in the NBA and what the resources are.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And actually, we have another question in the chat. This one is for Matt. Financially, this has been a tough time on all businesses with everything going on with coronavirus. What has it looked like from a front office standpoint with the BayHawks? How has everything been going? How has everything been affected? What has, just in terms of the front office side, what have you noticed? What have you been trying to do in terms of working with everything going on currently?
Yeah, no question, right? I mean, this has been uncharted waters for everyone from the perspective of our staff, the business side. I mean, not playing those last, 4 home games, when you only get 24, and we didn't have the opportunity to play our final 4, certainly affected us in terms of the way we finished the season that way. But, like I think a lot of us were remaining optimistic. I think the the fluidity of the situation, not necessarily knowing even what June and July is going to bring yet. Certainly we have no choice but to remain optimistic about what November or December could bring, and as Coach just mentioned, the strong likelihood that there could be maybe a later start to the G League season next year. So what I can tell you that what we've been doing is very regular communication with the league. I've been part of several regular meetings with our league president, Sharif Abdur-Rahim, the G League front office, and they remain optimistic. In fact, just this week, Sharif said they will leave, no stone unturned when it comes to the efforts that we'll put forth to have a season this coming year, but have a season that is as close to normal as is absolutely possible, and obviously with a lot of factors that are going to go into that. But keep in mind the G League being so closely aligned with the NBA, as the NBA looks at a potential restart and trying to finish this season, as Coach alluded to, that would very likely have an effect on both the start of the NBA and the G League season this coming year. So finally, I can tell you, kudos to our staff. We've been remaining engaged. Every week the league has a number of resources that we can take advantage of, from best practice sharing to welcoming in some of the NBA's partners, talking about strategies. Obviously, this sort of new time that we find ourselves in, the evolution of the digital format and digital and virtual events such as this, and how we'll likely be doing more of these. So we remain at work, remain committed to, again, just sort of optimism. I think that's the only choice that I've talked with our group about is, let's think positive in this. I like the phrase, especially very true in Erie, is that there's always winter. Sometimes winter's long, sometimes winter's harsh, but spring always comes. Things will bloom again. So that's our mindset, and hopeful that 2021 season will be back to all the things we love.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that page, Matt. I'm really looking forward to when the G League comes back, that it'll be in full force, and really looking forward to getting back to that. We have one more question in the chat, and I think this could kind of go for both, whoever wants to take the lead on this. We've been seeing obviously the new trend of some top prospects going into or foregoing college and deciding to sign this contract with the G League, with incentives, being a lot higher than the initial plan that they had set in place. Do you guys think high schoolers jumping to the G League will become a continual trend and can really take off? Do you think this is good for the league? Do you think it's not good for the league? I guess, Matt, since you just finished off on the last one, we can get your thoughts first, and then Ryan, we can transition over to you and get some of your thoughts as well regarding this whole process.
Yeah, I think my take is it's a good option, and I think it's important to emphasize that, as our league has done, as a lot of this is quickly evolving, and we know that the whole picture of what this professional path is going to look like in the coming year, and obviously in the years ahead. But certainly those of us that are sports fans, that are obviously consuming any type of new sports news these days, the questions become the impact it might have on the college game and beyond. And I think that we're talking about a very small handful of kids here that would make up this team. In fact, there's talk about some of the teams going to be composed of some older guys, veteran NBA guys, potentially veteran G League guys that might be able to serve as mentors and provide some structure on this team. So I think it's important to note that it's an option. I think a big thing that the NBA had looked at over the last couple of years was some of the kids where maybe college wasn't their choice or the best option for them coming out of high school. They were going overseas. And I think the NBA, I know the NBA prides itself in being the best in the world at developing young talent. And I think this approach to the professional path is an attempt at trying to back that up. with an option for these young players, and instead of having them go overseas for what would be considered a gap year, that they can stay right here in the States and have an option if they should fall into that elite category.
And Ryan, you are more than welcome to follow up with that. Any insight in terms of this whole path that players are starting to take?
Yeah, I think obviously it's something that's actually good for the overall G League, because it's going to continue to put exposure on the G League and give extra exposure to the opponents that they're playing. Right? Because every NBA staff is going to be watching those games and evaluating those games, so it's additional exposure for those players and their opponents. The success of it in the future obviously depends on how it goes this year. If a lot of those guys are getting drafted in good positions, I think more and more players will start to do it. Obviously, it's a great option and opportunity for kids that aren't interested in going to college. It gives them the chance to stay here and be evaluated and help grow. As Matt had said, a lot of those kids were going to Australia kind of specifically, as we've seen with R.J. Hampton and Melo Ball. So it gives them an opportunity to stay here in the States and see the investment. But I think anytime the NBA is continuing to invest in the G League, other G League teams are going to benefit from that. And so I think it continues to make a statement for what the G League is trying to do, what the NBA is trying to do with the G League, and trying to help it grow. And obviously, hopefully, that's something that will continue to happen. The way that the NBA utilizes it will be very interesting to see. Who gets to play against the team? What really is the format and the setup? So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. And like you said, year one, seeing how this rolls. If it works very well and you continue to see success moving forward, it just provides nothing but good things for the G League, the NBA as a whole, the organization. So we're looking forward to seeing how that pans out as well. We have time for one more question, and we're gonna field this in. Ryan, what was your biggest learning from this past season? Growth as a head coach, whatever it was. What was your biggest learning, biggest takeaway from year one in Erie?
The value of having healthy players, because it doesn't matter, if you're trying to develop guys but they can't work because they're not healthy. If you're trying to develop a team but you can't practice because guys aren't healthy, it impacts everything. So I think the value on trying to keep guys healthy, right, or help them get ready to play quicker is super important. And that would be my biggest takeaway, because it changes everything, right? If you cut the 72 games in half, a lot of the issues that we had are solved as a team in terms of wins, losses, development, etc.
Well, gentlemen, I think that all but about wraps up our inaugural episode of BayHawks Live, presented by LECOM. Very excited to get you guys both on here. Really appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy Thursdays to sit down and chat for 30 minutes. And again, thank you everybody that was in attendance for our first episode. We're really looking forward to continuing these every Thursday, and really looking forward to everyone that signs on for these. So, gentlemen, if you guys have any last words, any outros? Matt, I'll start with you, and Ryan will finish out with you.
Well, if nothing else, good to spend time with all of you, at least virtually. Continue to stay safe. As I said, looking forward to when we can be back together again. And I will say, in the talk about the challenges that Coach Pannone and G League coaches in particular face, the one thing Coach failed to mention also was his wife gave birth to their second child in January. So right in the midst of the challenges of the G League season, they welcomed their second child, and his beautiful family now. I guess the silver lining for Coach is getting a little bit more time to spend with them. So again, Coach, appreciate all of you. Appreciate you, all that you've done. And again, to everybody out there, thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to doing a few more of these in the future.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit easier on me than it was my wife throughout the course of the season, and Then we left. We had a good road stretch not too long after the birth. So definitely trying to make up for it now, being home more and taking on more responsibility and trying to be a little bit more than just a roommate to my wife. Trying to actually be a parent and a father. So.
Well, again, thank you guys so much for signing in and taking the time out. And hope you guys have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your weekend, and a happy Memorial Day.
Thank you.